as soon as we'll just get people to quiet down here. And yeah, that's the one.
Is this on?
Yeah, it's on. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay, sure.
Merciful One, who may dwell in your tent, who may reside on your holy mountain, one who lives without blame, who does what is right, in whose heart truth is acknowledged, whose speech promotes no evil, who has sought to do no harm to others, nor acted harmfully towards neighbors, who abhors contemptible behavior, but who honors those who revere God, who does not waver, even at great personal risk, from keeping a promise, who seeks no reward for generous action, takes no bribe to distort judgment against the innocent. One who does so shall never be shaken.
Thank you. Okay, Rafi.
The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not lack. In lush meadows he lays me back. He leads me down to the watering hole. In tranquility he restores my soul. As I go down the path, he guides my aim towards righteousness for the sake of his name. Though I walk through the valley in the shadow of death, I will not fear evil, I feel no distress. For you are with me as you will always be. Your rod and your staff bring comfort to me. You set me a table in front of my foes, anointing my head, my cup overflows. Let only goodness and kindness pursue me through all the days of this life you give to me. And may I always be able to stay in the house of the Lord for the length of my days.
We have come together this morning to celebrate the life and to mourn the loss of Michael Wolpert. May his memory be for a blessing. Even as we grapple with the pain of his physical absence, we recall the gift of his presence in our lives. We are thankful for all that was good and true in the way that he lived, and for the memories which shall endure among all those who knew and loved him. It is a daunting and ultimately impossible task to attempt to capture the depth and complexity of a human soul using the tools of the written or spoken word. This would be true even if one were to write a book-length study of a person's life, and how much the more so in this minuscule amount of time we are given at this poignant and difficult moment. And yet, we are driven by our human need for meaning and continuity to make the attempt nonetheless. So let us acknowledge today that we are at the merest beginning of the process of distilling the legacy that Michael leaves to us, a process that will continue over the coming weeks and months, and for many of us, last far into the future. Reflections on Michael's life will be offered from several different perspectives this morning. I will begin with a general overview, and then we'll hear from two of his siblings who will add some detail from their own unique vantage points. Almost from the moment he arrived in this world, Michael Wolpert had to contend with a painful sense that he didn't quite seem to fit in the way that many others did. Yet, despite this embedded impediment in his life, he was able to achieve success, to cultivate relationships, and to make a positive difference in the world. This fact is a tribute to his resilience, to his courage, and to his strength as a human being. He was aware from a very young age that he tended to see things differently than most others, and he was driven to do things in his own way as well. He did not have much use for the standard rules of institutions, especially when there was no easily discernible reason for them to exist. One story the family told was of how he almost didn't graduate from high school because he refused to follow the rules in his gym class. Then he struck a deal with his gym teacher and committed to showing up for just one day in a nice suit with a fresh haircut. Not only did he pass the class and graduate, but he had the pleasure of throwing his family for a loop due to his unusually dapper appearance. While his decision to put on a suit that particular day was in the spirit of playful rebellion, the symbolism of respect and dignity associated with wearing a suit was something that would become very important to Michael a bit further down the road in his life. While Michael's high school counselor did not envision his path as being an academic one, Michael was to prove him quite wrong, with a number of scholarly achievements over the next period of years. As Michael moved from high school into college, he discovered, to his surprise and delight, that not all institutions in the world were based on the same narrow model of individual success. At Antioch College in Yellow Springs, he found himself at a school that encouraged him to be himself at his most authentic and valued the unique angles from which he viewed the world. It was here that he successfully double-majored in biochemistry and Spanish language and literature. It was here that he discovered his love and talent for learning languages, which would lead to a lifelong practice of picking up vocabulary in so many different languages that he was almost always able to address foreign visitors in their native tongue, no matter where they came from. It was also here that he was given credit and appreciation for such real-world experiences as working on the grape boycott under the leadership of Cesar Chavez. His experience of success at Antioch solidified and expanded Michael's appreciation for education, and he would eventually go on to be awarded a master's degree in urban studies from Cleveland State, and ultimately to earn a law degree from Case Western Reserve University. While part of Michael's academic interest grew out of a pure love of learning, he also pursued these goals with an eye towards a more practical kind of objective. He understood that his ability to acquire academic credentials would be the key that would allow him to do the kind of work that he felt it was important to do in the world, work that grew out of his most deeply held beliefs and values. Of these values, the one that was perhaps the most fundamental was that all people deserve to be treated with dignity, regardless of their station in life, and even regardless of the unwise choices they may have made at one time. He saw how frequently anyone who deviated in any way from the norms and expectations of mainstream society could be shunted to the side and ignored, or even mistreated and persecuted simply because they were different. And everything he chose to do in his life was informed by his profound desire to be an advocate for those who found themselves at the short end of the stick, whether socially, cognitively, economically, or legally. His first major foray into this kind of work was in his role as a drug counselor, and he eventually acquired enough practical experience in this arena to qualify to become a licensed social worker. But in this role, he still felt too limited in his ability to offer help to those who were most in need. And so he decided to pursue a law degree, which would allow him in a much more direct way to challenge the societal forces that sought to achieve their goals at the expense of another person's humanity. Following his graduation from law school, he was hired to work with the firm headed by Jerome Silver, and his practice of law quickly became, as he imagined it would, the focus of his efforts to make the world a better place. There was no case that he wouldn't take because of his conviction that everyone deserved a fair trial. It didn't even matter whether his clients could pay him or not. And he would make the point of regularly visiting his clients in prison as part of his demonstration to them and to the system of the importance of upholding their worth as people, even in their current compromised state. His own welfare always came second to making sure that whoever walked through his door was not going to be turned away empty-handed. And Michael was almost always able to apply his keen legal mind to the cases of his clients such that their situation was improved in one way or another. While the bulk of Michael's work in the world was taken up with the practice of law, he also found other avenues that allowed him to work on achieving greater dignity for all people. Michael had a particular interest in finding ways to help those diagnosed with a mental illness, and so he decided to serve on the board of the Magnolia Clubhouse. This organization is part of an international movement to strengthen the sense of respect and self-worth for people living with mental illness, and Michael was drawn to its focus on the development and enhancement of vocational skills as the surest path towards achieving that sense of self-worth. As important as his professional and volunteer commitments were to him, Michael did not neglect the personal dimension of his life. His relationships with his family and his friends were always important. The effort he put forth to attend his niece's wedding just 6 weeks ago and the enjoyment that he experienced at being able to celebrate with his family is one testament to the value he placed on these connections. Family on the most intimate level was also very important to Michael, and twice in his life he was blessed to achieve a loving marital partnership. Earlier in his adulthood with Joyce, with whom he raised their beloved son Bob, and then over the past 7.5 years with Barb, and in both cases, Michael inspired a sense of love and devotion in the women with whom he shared his life at this deepest of levels. By all those who knew him, Michael was seen as very much a giving person, always willing to do anything to help someone in need. He was also known as being able to accept others for who they were and for where they were in their lives in a completely non-judgmental way. Besides these inspiring qualities, he was someone who was passionate about music and travel and who had a wonderful sense of humor. He was a person who was always curious about the world and always enjoyed engaging others in conversation so that he could add to his own understanding, whether the topic related to current events or religious ideas and practices or the latest scientific theory. Yet, as is the case for all of us, there were a number of paradoxes in Michael's life. He was a person of remarkable intelligence who at the same time struggled with the practical and organizational dimensions of his day-to-day responsibilities. He was a person who knew himself to be cut from a different cloth than many others, who nevertheless dreamed of having a rather traditional kind of home and family life. And he was a person with a profound devotion to helping others, but who was not so good at helping himself. As we begin to reflect today on the legacy that Michael leaves to us, one thing is clear. While his unique approach to life often brought challenges that could make things difficult for himself and for those who loved him, it also allowed him to live in consonance with his most deeply held beliefs in a way that most of the rest of us never achieve. May Michael's modeling of that be one of the many blessings that his memory bestows upon us. Zichrono livracha. In a moment, I'll call on two of Michael's siblings to share some of their personal reflections on his life. But I would first like to acknowledge that while his wife Barb did not feel up to speaking this morning, she asked me to share that she is grateful for the 7.5 years she had with Michael. I'd like to invite Michael's brother Andy to come forward.
Well, thank you all for coming. It really is so wonderful that Mike touched all your lives. And Fratello, that's what he always used to say. I guess I'm maybe the only person he said that to, but it's the only I could still hear it. So the first 12 years of my life, we shared a bedroom, and every night, I had nothing to say, and he would go on for about an hour or so about everything he observed. He had this incredible ability to observe what happened and, describe it. And then as we got older, there was maybe a little more emotion, a little more angst. But also he taught me about so much about boats and airplanes. He knew every single type of boat and every type of airplane and what their characteristics were. And then he started getting interested in girls and stuff, and I didn't really know what he was talking about, really. I was too young. Even though I was just a little bit younger, he was a little precocious, but, so he's really, that was the world that I grew up in. It was much better than television, much. There was a story that our parents used to tell us. I'm sure most of you heard about there were these 3 trains. There was like one train. I think it was 3. Okay, the one train they had to get up over this hill, and the one train, was very full of itself, and it's like, yeah, I could if I would, but I won't. And then there was another one that just couldn't make it. It was just like, well, I would if I could, but I can't. And then there was the other train that was, I think I can, and I think I can. And I finally made it up over the hill, and I when I was growing up, I thought, I was probably the one that could if he would, but he won't. It kind of fits my mold more. And Mike was maybe more the, well, he would if he could, but he can't. But you know what? He actually was the train that could. It took a long time. And he with just the power of his mind, he proved that he could, and he again and again, he was able to do that. So that was really inspiring. Well, the other thing was a couple other random memories. But so then we got onto high school, and then there was that that period of the 60s. A lot of people in this room. I can't overstate how important that period of time was for me and for Mike, and I'm sure, and it's like that our generation came of age, and he completely showed us the way. We had a discussion yesterday about whether or not Mike was a hippie, and he made it very clear to me he was not a hippie, and I know that, it was controversial, but he considered himself to be a freak, not a hippie. So, and those of you who were there then, you know the distinction. He really resented, at that time, the beautiful people. He did not want to be one. He did not trust them or whatever. They were just they weren't really sincere, But a person who's really a freak can really be whoever they want to be. And so I aspire to be like that. And just in general, just in concluding, I guess, that if I can borrow a saying from I think it's Nike, be like Mike. I want to be like Mike. And, just to have more, to care more about other people, to be more tireless, to have more values, have my values inspire my actions, and to value friendship and family the way he did. And so, that's true. I think it's true when anybody passes. I feel like I need to just, I'm going to start being more like him, and if I just know I will. And so I sort of haven't in the past because that was his job, and now it's going to be more my job. Okay. Anyway, thank you for listening. Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much, Andy, for sharing those reflections. I'd like to now invite Hillary to come forward and share her thoughts.
I'm the youngest of the 4 Wolpert children, and more than 7 years younger than Mike. So I don't have these clear memories of Mike when he was a teenager, before he was a teenager, and he was a wild and crazy kid. I was too little to remember, I wasn't born yet. But he was really a mensch. His highest priority was always wanting to help people. He went from being a teenager wanting to make the world a better place, being involved in different community activities that really trying to do that. They didn't just, say, oh, well, things are like that. No, they really tried to rearrange things to make the world a better place, to wanting to make a living helping people make the world and making the world a better place. He worked too hard sometimes. He wanted to help his clients, his law clients, so much he sometimes worked 7 days a week. He felt like that was his mission, that they needed him. He was very loyal to family and to friends. Family meant a lot to him. Once when I came to visit in the winter, mostly to help him a little with his house, I was leaving at 8 a.m. for the airport, so I said goodbye, I think the night before, over the phone. He showed up at Sue's at 7:15 to say goodbye to me, like it was just a regular time to be there. It was just, of course, he was going to be there. He was not an observant Jew in the traditional sense. However, for him, like for our father, certain holidays mattered a real lot, especially the high holidays and Passover. Michael had a wonderful, deep voice. He would break into song. Maybe when he's thinking about a holiday, he'd suddenly go, Kol Nidre. It might be a few days before the holiday or whatever, but he would just break into that. Or, ah, dear who, and he loved music. It was part of one of those things that gave him real joy. I know Barb mentioned that more recently they went to movies together a lot, and movies are partly music too, and it's part of what carries us along. And some of you were here at my mom's funeral, and we played a song on the guitar that she really liked, but music was like that for Michael too, that it really brought him joy. And he had a lot of ideals, like we've said, and he wanted the Jews to be an or lagoyim, a light to the nations. He'd say that. And he'd be embarrassed when Jewish people would do things that weren't consistent with that. And he really wanted people to live by the ideals they'd been taught, and he really cared for the downtrodden, like we've said. I found a leaf this morning when I was out for a walk, and it reminded me of Mike. It was an oak leaf that had like some dark, splotchy parts, and it was kind of torn, and here it is, only August, and it had fallen. And it probably was from an oak tree that wasn't that healthy. Yet I can imagine that that oak leaf wanted to stay green and stay on the tree until the fall like the other leaves, and that it really tried. And staying green on the tree was pretty easy for the other leaves, but not for that one, even though it really made an effort to hold on, and I think that's really Mike. The storm that occurred the other night was really powerful. Apparently it was a microburst, 80 miles an hour winds that were here the other night. And it was too much for that leaf, and it fell. Like Michael, it struggled and held on for a really long time with that disease probably on that tree. It held on, it wanted to stay on that tree and get to be a green leaf like everybody else. And then it couldn't keep struggling anymore. Michael had some health issues for a while, and it was really reducing his energy level, but he kept trying. But he had been more energetic and stronger in his ability to help people earlier. The last conversation I had with Mike was on the topic of Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av, a day of mourning for the fall of the temple in Jerusalem. He would call me occasionally to get my perspective on topics. Sometimes they were political, sometimes they were religious, sometimes they were other things. If he was puzzled and needed another perspective, try to understand something. So he called me because he wanted clarification about what Tisha B'Av meant. He said, do you believe both temples were destroyed on Tisha B'Av? So I took sort of a note from a rabbi where I live, and the question isn't what the tradition is so much as what the tradition and the source can teach you. So what I answered was, it doesn't matter whether you believe that both temples were destroyed on that particular day. Having one day of fasting, to me, to remember all the suffering and terrible things that befell the Jewish people since we were exiled from Israel, is really not asking too much. It's a full fast day. Think of all the suffering we went through, Someone who's actually here left a recollection in the funeral parlor's online remembrance book that Michael had spoken with him about Tisha B'Av last week. and asked whether he was going to fast and something about what he was doing. And the conversation might have occurred right after the conversation Mike and I had. Michael was like that. When he had knowledge, he wanted to share it. He wanted to keep expanding it. And when he had skills that he knew could help other people, and he wanted to keep sharing that. And I liked what Andy said, that he was really living a life that was consistent with those values, and we can all keep that as a really important thing to do. Not that it's going to be easy, but that, you live a life consistent with those values, and that's really what he did. And that's the traditional thing to say, is we should be comforted with the mourners for Zion in Jerusalem, but we should be comforted knowing that that goal is there, and we got it from our parents, and it's radiating around. This is off script now. There's a belief that the soul doesn't disappear right away, that wherever it is it's going, it doesn't go right away, but he might be hovering around, and he can keep inspiring us with that vision and that goal. And then there's nothing inconsistent with any tradition that says that he's not hovering in this room and wanting us to keep doing that.
Thank you so much, Hillary, for sharing your reflections. At this time, I'd like to invite everyone to please rise for the chanting of the memorial prayer. El Malei Rachamim Shochen Bamromim Hamtzei Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanfei HaShechina B'malot Kedoshim Utehorim Kezohar Harakia Mazhirim Et Nishmat Meir Mordechai Ben Abba Shabtai V'Rachel She'alach Leolamo Ana Ba'al Harachamim Hastirehu Beseter Kenafecha Leolamim Utzror Bitzror HaChayim Et Nishmato Adonai Hu Nachalato V'yanuach b'shalom al mishkavo, v'nomar Amen. God filled with mercy, dwelling in the heavens' heights, bring proper rest beneath the wings of your Shekhinah, your divine presence, amid the ranks of the holy and the pure, illuminating like the brilliance of the skies, the soul of Michael Wolpert, who has gone to his eternal place of rest. May you, who are the source of mercy, shelter him beneath your wings eternally, and bind his soul among the living, that he may rest in peace. And let us say, Amen. Please be seated. At the conclusion of the funeral, we'll proceed to burial at the Mayfield Cemetery, which will be followed by the beginning of the Shiva. I apologize, I neglected to bring the card with me, so I actually don't even have is it 3109? 3108. Thank you, Scarborough Road. And Shiva will continue today. We'll continue with the exception of Shabbat through Monday evening, and there will be a minyan each non-Shabbat morning at 8:30 a.m. and a non-Shabbat evening at 8:30 p.m. So the first one will be tonight at 8:30, tomorrow morning at 8:30, and then we'll pick up again on Sunday morning at 8:30.